Hello, thanks for tuning in to Girls Who Gab with Habs and Muffy. This week we're talking about failure and success, which often can be seen as perfection, being perfect. That sound familiar? Stay tuned. Hey Habs, it's Muffy, and this is such an interesting topic. The idea of failure and perfection and success. This is something I work, as you can imagine, in my therapy practice with all of the time. And of course, I'm always working with it for myself as well. I think this is just so common and pervasive of how we see ourselves in terms of what we do in life, both personally and professionally. What does failure mean? What does success look like? People are often set up by their families of origin for perfection, and everything has to be perfect. And we know cognitively in our brains, perfection does not exist. And yet, so many of us are striving for perfection. And when we are perfect, then we will be successful. And, that basically means you will never be successful because perfection does not exist inherently. So that formula is always a setup for failure. Brings us right back to the first thought. I have grappled with this for sure in my own unique set of patterns from my own family of origin. I don't know if I was ever thinking I had to be perfect, but I had to succeed. I had to be a success. I don't think I framed it in terms of perfection. I think I inherently knew that perfection did not exist. And so I did not tie perfection to success as many people do. So I'm not automatically back to the failure thing, because that formula, like I said, if you're trying to be perfect and that equals success, well, you're always going to fail. I didn't tie that together, but I did have certain markers for what is successful, and particularly in business. When I think about failure in my own life, I'm going to go right to, my mind immediately turns, bright red on my original company back in Seattle called Peppers and Pollywogs, which is a kids party planning company that went online. It was like a tech company. Before it was a tech company back when I ran it in DC, it was just a straight event planning business for kids' birthday parties. And I deemed it quite successful because I just started this business. People called. They asked if I was a kids' party planner. I said yes, and that's how I started planning parties. I had absolutely no capital to begin any business. That's why an event planning business is a great business to begin when you have no capital. Because how I worked it was, people paid the expenses of that, and then they gave me a fee for doing all of that work. So I was really never out any money, which is what you want when you're an entrepreneur who has no capital. So I felt, and I just kept, so much of that type of business is word of mouth. And that's what happened to me with that business. I got more and more clients. So that was like a success. When I was doing Peppers and Pollywogs online as a content creator for kids parties, like a content expert, like a kids party expert. And then we also connected people up to party planning resources like, entertainers and invitations, and even rhymes that we had poets writing for kids party invitations that people could order. That is where I felt like it in the end. I did that rendition of Peppers and Pollywogs for 5 years, and it did not succeed because it did not make money in the end. It had more expenses than revenue, and so it failed. And I always mark that as a failure in my mind. If I really break it down, there were successes for me. I self-published a book, and off of that book, I did over 100 TV appearances and wrote all these articles. And that eventually got me to be the kids party planning expert for Toys R Us and other major companies. So like in many ways, it was a success. But when we think about business, we think about building something entrepreneurially. People think about that in terms of, nickels and dimes. Does it make money? And does it make enough money to sustain you? And in the end, it just did not. And if I just dig down a little deeper into Peppers and Pollywogs, as I said, it was really a tech startup. And we even had funding and had an investor round of angels. We call them angel investors. They're people who come in. It was not a large amount of money any one person gave us, but it was a little friends and family round. We took in a small amount of money, and that helped us, get to the next level. The next level was in the life of that company was to sort of convert that. It was a debt note to like stock. And so we did successfully convert it. It was like an 18-month note. No, maybe not 18 months, maybe 12 months, like a 12-month note. And then it converted to stock in this startup company. And at that moment, which is, didn't realize until only now, hindsight's always 2020. That's where we can have perfection, right? But in the moment, someone came along and said, I want to buy your company, which is wonderful because there's no debt on the books. You basically have people invested now. They have stock. And I'm holding a lot of stock. And they wanted to take it, like, for more of a stock deal in their company because they didn't have a lot of money. But, I might get a job and have, like a regular salary. And then I would have gotten whatever stock in their company, the whole thing, right? And also the investors who came into Peppers and Pollywogs would have gotten stock in that company that was buying. But of course, I felt, and this is often what drives imperfect failure, I think, is I can do it all by myself. I can do this. I can get an out for my company and for my investors better than this offer. And I will do that all on my own because that's what I have to do. That's what I owe these people. That's what I have to do. And so that set me up to be just doing, and never gaining the financial traction I really needed. And so eventually, even though I put in tons of money and tons of time and sweated blood and tears for this company, it came to nothing. And I always thought that was a great failure of mine. And had I sold the company at that golden moment, when I had only been in this company for like 18 months, I already had converted debt into stock. We weren't that far into like funding something. That company sold to Time. Yeah, Time magazine. And I still see their logo in their big platform of things. I'm just like, oh my God, how could I not have seen that? I didn't need to do everything. I could have just let it go and learned in my first entrepreneurial foray that not everything has to be taken by me to the greatest heights, right? The greatest heights of like Amazon or Microsoft. Like, you're just a little kids party planning online business. To get out at all is like amazing. You built that much value in 18 months. And that's what they actually say. 18 months is when you need to like sell, there needs to be some sort of event. And I had an event, but I didn't take up that event. So that has been something that I have seen as a failure. Only later have I been able to say, no, there was a lot of successes within the totality of that business. But in the end, it didn't make money and I lost money. And for business, that's the measuring stick of success, right? Really, that's what it is. Harsh reality, but it's true. So grappling with that has been many, many years to come to terms with it, to understand myself, to give myself credit for what quote unquote successes there were, but really tough. Really, really tough. And it's so nuanced in so many ways. What is successful? What is failure? What is this? What is that? I'm going to just take out the word perfection because that's not, as I said, that's not how I measure success. But this is a hard call for everybody. And I think the rubber is always going to meet the road, particularly in something entrepreneurial. Where I did make a successful business is in my therapy practice. But of course, it's not some, unique idea that I'm bringing to market, right? I became a professional through what I thought was going to be just 2 years of training, but ended up being 7 years of training from the moment I put an application into grad school to getting all of my hours to be fully licensed and not be supervised anymore. That was like 7 years. I had no idea what I was signing up for. I guess in that case, I had many, many challenges because I'm not by nature a person who, going to school and just doing the next class and the next paper and the next term and then do this. It doesn't come completely naturally to me. I'm much more entrepreneurial, much more risk taking, much more like creating on the fly, which I think really makes people very, very uncomfortable. That's like my foray. That's what I love. So like, okay, do this, do this, do this, do this, and you'll get that. But in the end, I did hang in there and stick in there. And that's exactly what I got. I got my degree. And I also chosen an internship site that allowed me to take my patients out of my site into my own private practice. And I began with like 8 or 9 patients and then built from there. And I had my practice for several years now. And it's like, oh, okay, that is success, right? You went to school, you got the degree, you opened up a practice, and you earn money off of seeing patients as a therapist. Like, it's, I guess, quote unquote, easier to have success and a professional path like that, because if you just keep showing up and doing it, even though there's so many challenges, you will probably get where you're going. It's sort of assured, right? You kind of go to medical school, you'll become a doctor. You go this, as long as you finish, how good you'll be, who knows? But like, that's a measure of like, okay, that's successful. It's, when they always talk about failing, like, okay, fail and fail again and fail again and fail again and just keep getting up. I think the hard part for me, at least, has been getting up again. Yeah, it's been super, super hard for me. I think when I lost peppers and pollywogs, I think actually, if I think about it through a psychological lens, and audience, just go with me here for a minute. Like I split off that part of me that's an entrepreneur, and this other part that was like, okay, I'll do this professional thing. It'll be safe. I'll take this natural talent of mine to listen and be with the other and pursue that. And this other part just kind of fell to the ground. It was many years later after I became a therapist. I'm like, wait a second, there's a part of me that's never gotten up again. So it looked like I got up again because I was pursuing this therapy thing. But there was a part of me that was just, on the ground, never getting up again. And now, that part of myself has gotten back up through things like this, like creating a podcast with you, Habs. Like, that's like a creative, entrepreneurial, spirited undertaking. When RK asked me to produce his comedy shows, even though I hate comedy, like, okay, it's not quite like kids' birthday parties, but I can plan an event. I can plan a production, basically, right? The elements, like I understand, you need a venue, you need people, you need talent, right? Pulling those together and like taking that risk and doing that. And I'm actually earning money off of those productions today, a year in. So it's like, okay. And again, when you're producing a show, it's show business. You need to make money. And we are doing that in some of the shows we're doing for different places. So like that is that part of myself getting up and embracing my entrepreneurial self that really wants to see success. Success is like bringing something, in my mind, bringing something to fruition that's creative and entrepreneurial that wasn't there before, and earning money off of it and being able to be sustaining with it, self-sustaining financially. And that's all for me. I think a lot of my adult life has been grappling with that as far as failure and success. And like I'm in early days with both this podcast with you, Habs, and also with producing. And they always start with the early days, and the early days are the hardest, but they're the most interesting to me because you're starting completely from scratch in something new. And I think if we take steps to do that, if that's in line with who we are, that is success. These days, it's a lot easier for me to say the next step, taking it, being bold and taking it is success. But it's taken me until like my early 50s to be able to say and call it successful. And I think as we get older, um, our definition of success changes as well versus when we just come out of college and are hitting it in our 20s. What do you think, Habs? How do you relate to failure, to perfection? Does perfection tie in with you to success? Or do you have other markers for how you see success for yourself? I'm curious.
Ugh, Muffy, you've definitely opened up a can of worms. Talking about failure, perfection, success. Yes, I very much know about failure, perfection. Success, I'm not sure. I think that I used to think success looked very differently for me, and now I have changed what success looks like. And I think I have to celebrate the things that I don't necessarily see as successes, but they are. When I was younger, I think what it meant to be successful was I was going to be this big, important person, like the head of some company, or I don't know. I mean, I went into college thinking about politics, like maybe some huge person who changed the world or have some kind of impact globally, whether it be helping people in an underdeveloped country. I mean, I knew I wasn't necessarily always quite smart enough for some of that work. And I don't mean that in a denigrating way. I think there's better people out there to serve those roles. But, now as I look back and I look forward, I have had a lot of successes. I've had personal successes. I mean, I look at my girls as a success. My family, I mean, we're not perfect, right? We're definitely not perfect. And so, yeah, I don't think perfection equals success whatsoever. In fact, I think it's the imperfections that make people more successful, to be quite honest. I look at the people who aspire for perfection and I don't see what they've actually succeeded in. I think imperfections are what makes people and what makes people interesting and different and distinctive. Yes, I've had failures. I most recently had a failure. I don't know if it was a failure, but it felt like a failure. And it's taken me a while to get back up. It hit me hard. I've had two kind of more recent failures. Again, I don't know if they were failures. I'm just not sure they were the right choices, but at the same time, I learned so much from them. The job before last I thought was going well. I was contributing. I put in a lot of hours. There were a lot of great outcomes. But at the end of the day, they decided to get rid of me because they wanted to bring somebody back who had left. And that's what it really was about. Now, that was devastating because it was quite a blow. It was a shock. It was a surprise. I was just numb for weeks. And for months, I just felt like sitting in bed, not doing anything, just because it just came out of left field. But I did grow from that. And I learned a lot about kind of keeping my eyes a little bit wider, more open, looking for those red flags, not jumping into something just because I need to, but really making sure in my gut that it feels right. I don't know that I felt that. I think I felt unsure, but that I needed to take it, and I did. My next and last position, well, now I'm foraying into a new role in many respects, but my last kind of official position, yeah, it just was a really poor fit. And there were red flags, and I didn't listen to them because I thought it could be so good. And it was such a horrible, toxic environment. And I'm so glad that I've left and I'm not there. My world is so much better. And I personally have so much to focus on. And yes, it's been almost a year now. So that is a little bit longer in between jobs, but I I am getting back up, and you know, I am I feel like I'm being bold and taking the next steps in my professional career. So I agree with you. I think that is a huge marker of success is getting back up and out there. It's hard. Don't get me wrong. It's so hard. I mean, I've dragged my feet. I procrastinated. I'm pushing through. I'm not pushing through as fast as I would like to, but it's scary too. But I'm getting out there. So yeah, I think successes come in really small wins. I just have finished my website. I just have a couple of things I need to plug in, but all the main content is finally up there. My goals have kind of been pushed back for various reasons. Spring break came about, just disrupting my life, or um, I was sick for a couple of weeks. So, but I'm getting there. And so, like, that's a success. Yes, sometimes it feels very unstable, a little bit scary. And I do have some self doubt, but I'm putting one foot forward in front of each other and I'm going for it. Regardless of all the doubts and the fears and the naysayers, I'm going through with it. I do have to say, that when you posed the idea of doing this podcast was a little bit scary for me. And I definitely had some doubts like, nah, is this really going to turn into anything? But you pushed me. And I love that you are a risk taker and you just jump into things and try things on the fly. I would love to know where you think your entrepreneurial spirit stems from or where it really started. I was curious about that, but I love that about you because it really pushed me. I was like, okay, I'm game. Let's do this. And as we did it and we kept doing it, I think we balance each other out really well and we have fun with this. And that's the biggest thing. I think I had this aha moment. I often use that phrase in many different contexts. I was like, I'm having fun and I'm doing work. No, we've not turned it into profit yet, but I'm having so much fun. I'm sitting in my bed, drinking a cup of coffee and just talking. Who knew? Like, I love to gab. You love to gab. We love to gab together. But who knew? Like, that could just be fun and turned into some type of profession. So I'm really hopeful. And regardless, I am having fun. It's a highlight of my day when I get to do this with you, to be honest. So, like I look at these failures and like how, or these changes in my professional career and how they've opened up so many new things that I could never have imagined. So that in of itself is success, right? Discovering new things. It's a success. If you're just stagnant and you're not, you know, I think we both have that mindset of like lifelong learners and wanting to see what else is out there, what's possible. And we want to have fun. In all of my jobs, I've always been like, I just want to have fun. Like I've known that, but I didn't know what it looked like. I remember like, looking at magazines and going, oh, looking at Couture or like the Today Show and all this stuff. And I'm like, God, it just looks like they're having so much fun. I want to do that. I don't want this work to be so hard. I mean, work is hard, but it's also fun. And if you work hard and you have fun, I think that's like a huge marker of success for me. Now, I think that I've taken a little bit of break and tried to step back and really reflect. And I know these words are often used by lots of people these days, especially as you start to age in your career. But it is true. And I think it is important to do that if you want to move forward. I mean, I suppose it's easier to have a prescribed path to success. I mean, I know with your therapy that you have had that success and kudos to you. I mean, congratulations after 7 years. Why did it take 7 years versus 2? I think you've told me once, but I can't remember the exact chain of events. But at the same time, like you are somebody who is a natural therapist. You are very intuitive, reflective, analytical. So like that comes very natural for you and you're good at it. I think, you can have like a prescribed profession and not be that great at it. I mean, there's many therapists out there that aren't that great. And you can hear the birds in the background chirping, yes, yes, yes. Oops. And I didn't realize how big and successful your kids' party planning business really was because you are a success. You were a success. Yes, it ultimately failed, but I think in the moment and the time, you were a huge success. I mean, I'm just amazed at everything you did. I didn't understand to the level, but now I have that deeper understanding. And you learned from it, right? Like that's the biggest thing. I mean, I think about a lot of people, billionaires, that have owned lots of businesses and they always talk about how they failed and then this one finally stuck. So I don't think it's like you just go out and you're a success. No, in some cases, yes. But I don't think that's like as common because we learn things along the way through our failures. You know, you learn that you couldn't do it all by yourself. That is such a huge lesson that just sets you up for success, even more success. I remember one of my earlier jobs, they let me go. I mean, I was managing this account that had gone through several different account managers and they just could never close it. And it kind of got dumped on me at the last minute. Well, anyways, I felt like I could do it all and clean it all up, and I couldn't. And I think from that, I learned to always be like really transparent. Like communication is key. It really is. Don't keep it all to myself and let myself figure it out because you need to tell other people what's going on. It's all about expectations and it's all about asking for help because you are overwhelmed or you can't do it yourself. And regardless, I look at some of these past failures like, yes, I've learned from them and I'll take them on, as I'm starting my event planning business and working with you on the podcast. And I think we have learned so much that we can make this podcast something that is successful. And I think it already has been. We're at 32, 33 episodes. I mean, come on, week by week, and we keep improving. So yay to us. I just want to say, oh, the words perfection just makes me all prickly inside. I can't stand that word. I had an HR person say, like, yes, your boss expects you to be perfect. And if you can't be, then you can't be in this job. I don't even know where to go with that one. I mean, I just want to laugh in her face, right? Like, how can anyone say that? Like, seriously, it's just not possible. I mean, even my manager wasn't perfect. Many people made mistakes. It's just that I wasn't allowed to make a mistake and I had to be so-called perfect. I mean, I shine in knowing that I'm not perfect. And oh my God, I'm not. I think I've done a lot of things and I have been successful in a lot of things. I mean, I think, I've taken on several volunteer roles here in my hometown with the school system, and I've been hugely successful. So, yeah, did I make any money from it? No. But did I have fun? Yes. Was it sometimes frustrating and annoying? Yes, yes, and yes. But at the end of the day, I also felt like I was making some kind of impact for my girls and for, their peers. I hope that I did. I think that I did. And I mean, I think that's what we think about when we're, doing this podcast. We love to gab with each other and just share our worlds wherever we are in our own time. And I think doing this as a podcast, we are maybe making an impact in somebody else's lives. So yeah, you asked me about the markers of what markers I feel it means to be successful. It's having fun. It's having experience. It's having the ability to get up and go for something. It has, the acceptance that maybe you will stumble and fall, but maybe you won't. And I don't think anymore that success is defined as the fact that you're the most important person in the world or you're this big man on campus. I mean, I think about our local crossing guard, R. He has been our crossing guard for our elementary school forever. He's revered. everybody in the community loves him. He comes out every day, rain or shine, freezing cold, sometimes riding his bike, all bundled up. But he's there. He's there for every child, every parent, every biker that's going through. I mean, to me, he's a success. It might not be that financially rewarding, but he's happy. You can tell. He's happy, he enjoys it, and he's a good person. I think all of those things equal success. And I think perfection is kind of like being Darth Vader. I know that sounds like what an analogy, but like that's a bad person who wants to do no good. And I think the same for perfection, to be honest. What do you think, Muffy? Curious to know how you react to my comments.
Hey, Habs, it's Muffy. Oh, great stuff here, right? Just great stuff. It really has me curious, this topic. I mean, not only in terms of listening to you, but listening to myself, listening to my patients, like where we get the idea of what is a failure and what is success. And I think perfection gets into the kind of people's mental schema and tied up with success. Really, I just think about like societal norms, like familial norms, like how is it that we learn like what success is? And then we internalize that and then we abide by it. Rather than kind of not naming things as like, this is success, this is failure, this is success, this is failure, like not cataloging it like black and white like that, but like living more in the nuance of what any one given thing or situation is as we grow up or as we meet it. Like there's not a lot of space for that, right? It's like, oh, you were great. Look at your success. Or, oh my God, that's really bad, right? You're a failure. But like how those societal norms just get passed down and down and down. And it leaves a very small space to actually conceive of anything outside of those norms. I was just curious about it. I don't know what you think about that, like how we got to think about, oh, this is success, this is failure, and like aligning with that. All these many decades later in my life, I'm like, yeah, I'm about tearing those things down. And I think you're kind of there too, in redefining what success and failure is in one's life. Is there anything even such that is a failure, actually? You asked me two questions. One is about being an entrepreneur. I mean, I think some of it actually runs in the blood. And I say that because my last name is a Gujarati last name in India. My Gujarati last name is tied with a caste that's about business and making business, like doing business, making money through business, and not necessarily like going and working for like a hedge fund business or something in finance, but like creating business and doing business. So I think it kind of runs in the blood. Now, that was not what my father did at all. He took up a profession and had that type of life. But I think it was running in the blood of me. And I was always the kid who was like, I kind of had to make a dime. Like, I mean, my parents fed and clothed me and sheltered me. But I had to like, if I wanted to go to the movies or do this or that, I kind of had to make my own money. And like, I had to do that from a pretty early age. I mean, like when we moved to central Pennsylvania, I remember having a babysitting business and like, I think I'd even do dog sitting. I think I did cat sitting even. Like, and I remember putting the flyers up and, like making money. Like, I need to make money. And like babysitting rates were abominable back then. But, the times were a lot cheaper. And so, like, I remember, I have a very distinct memory of getting my babysitting money, like when I was 11 years old, because I did a lot of babysitting at 11. Can you imagine? And like riding my bike to the mall and going to the Woolworths. There was a Woolworths in this town. And like taking my own money and buying like dime store jewelry. I remember looking at the jewelry and being like, what would I like to have? And buying like my dime store. And then this Woolworths had a counter where you could have like lunch. This is way back, right? Early 80s in small town Pennsylvania. And I was sitting at the counter after I bought my jewelry, and I would have a piece of pie and a hot chocolate and be like, "I'm a lady about town with my earnings." And I was really proud of it. So I think that was in my blood. Like, if you go and get work, you can get money and then have fun and do things. So, and then, like I said, when I went to DC after college, I was like, yeah, it was fun. I was working the 9 to 5 job, but I was like, wait, there's something else I'd like to do, like on the weekends, to like make my own money and enjoy. I think you're mentioning about fun and having fun, and I was like, I love kids. I love kids parties. It's so fun. I know I'll be a kids party planner, and literally just put the sign out around coffee shops in that area and in Maryland area. And then one day someone called the number and it was my main phone number, right? Because we didn't have cell phones back then. They're like, "Hey, are you a kids party planner? I got your thing." And I'm like, "Well, indeed I am." And that's how I became a kids party planner. I mean, really like like just guerrilla business, right? Just guerrilla. I think it was always in me. I think. I think it's in the blood. And then I answered the call of the blood, I guess. You also asked me about how it took me so long to get through a master's. Well, it does take longer than 2 years. I think I was just thinking it'll be a 2 year, I just looked it up on the internet. It's 2 years to do a master's. It is and it's not. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of pacing when you're going to school as an adult. I remember being in the first like day of our new orientation at the first school I went to, and they were like, "Who's doing this part time? Who's doing it, full time?" And of course, I was a full time person. I was going to do this as fast as possible. And like people who raise their hand for part time, I was like, "Wow, those people are like, they're like so slow. Why would they be doing that?" I think I was one of the slowest people in the end, which is funny, and that's because I was also having a life. But I was very ignorant when I went into my mental health counseling program and didn't really understand the importance of licensure and the license that uh, institution that I was studying at had in order for me to have the highest credentialing for my mental health counseling degree. And the first school I started out with didn't. So I had to change. Um, so there was this kind of year where I wasn't like formally in school. I was taking credits at the first school that knew I could transfer into the secondary school. So I was taking a couple classes like that. But mainly it gave me some time to just travel with RK and just get ready to go into the school that had the credentialing I really needed. Thank God I did that because I did move to the East Coast, and I had not done that, I would have had to redo the whole training again, if you can even believe it. So rather, I was delayed a year. When I got into the other school, there was just all the requirements of a fully, what was called KCREP, licensed institution. So I had to do all those. I did those classes as quickly as possible, but they also had a practicum that wasn't a part of like my old school, which added time, and then a very rigorous internship, which went 4 quarters. So by the time, I entered it, but I always count like when I put my application in is when my career in mental health counseling began, which was like fall of 14. And then I went to school in 15. And then I came out, I fit at the end of 15. That was just 1 quarter, fall quarter. I was really like, I've got to leave this place and go to another institution. So all of 16, I was like in that transition time. And then 17 to 19, I was actually at Antioch finishing the training, doing all of that. And then after you have to do all these hours to get fully licensed. And that took me from September of 19 to June of 21. So yeah, that's why I say it was a 7-year process because, well, fall of 14 to June of 21, just short of 7 years to be fully licensed that I don't have to be supervised. So that's why so it's from application time into school where I started the journey through to my full license where I can sit with a person without being supervised was very short of just 7 years. So it was something. Yes, I think to just kind of round it back to what I opened up with, is there really failure? I think you're right. Success alights upon us by showing up every day to our lives. by giving our best to ourselves and to the other, as you're talking about with I think the crossing guard. Um, it's funny. There was maybe I'll just end on this note. There was this guy as a story, and this guy went off to, I don't know, like a Mexican, you know, like a beachy area for rest and relaxation. And he came upon a man who was fishing beside the side of the sea. And, he stopped to talk to this man, and the man said, "Oh, what do you do?" And the guy is like, "Oh, I work this big job in the big city. And, I'm trying to make all this money so that I can just relax in places like this eventually. And, it's just so hard because I want to spend more time with my children and I want to do all this and that. And like, it's a grind." And, he gets done talking. And then the guy says to him, "Well, what do you do?" The fisherman. And he's like, "All that you want, I have." This there he is on the beach, fishing, making his living, and all his children and family are surrounding him as he's making this living in this beautiful place. That's success, right? He didn't wait 30 years. He was just doing it as he wanted to. I always think of that story like, oh, one day, I'm trying to work all this hard to be successful so that I can have this. And like, you can have it. It's just a change of mindset.
Hey, Muffy. Uh, I loved your mention of Woolworths. I mean, that definitely dates us, right? Like, I mean, not in a bad way, but I remember that store too. We had one near us, and yes, they had lunch counters and jewelry and clothes and like all that kind of stuff. I loved it. I love envisioning you sitting there, having earned your money, babysitting and whatever else, and feeling like you were a lady about town, spending your money, well earned money, and having lunch, and of course, having a piece of pie. I can see it so clearly, but for those of you who don't know what Woolworths is, you've got to look it up because it was one of the first of its kinds, I think. Maybe not, but yeah, definitely brings back childhood memories. You said lady about town. I was laughing because nowadays you call that ladies who lunch. And thank you for just explaining where you kind of got your entrepreneurial spirit from your family name and the location of where your family grew up in India, Guraji, I think. That they were the Guraji people were very much into business, making businesses and creating it. It is interesting that your father didn't follow in those footsteps, probably in some part to rebel, although perhaps he could have had his own business as an investor. Again, I don't know if he's any good or not, but just interesting to think about. And then just talking about, I loved your story about the kids' party planning. You're like, well, yes, I am a kids' party planner. Let's say you'd never done one before. You didn't necessarily get the skills. You just innately knew how to do it because you loved it and you love party planning and you're good at it. So, and you're a kid at heart, and gosh, wouldn't we all like to be kids at heart? Aw. So I think that's an amazing model. You are for so many people. Like to me, that's success. You're a kid at heart and you haven't lost that. And I think that's the magic of being a child. But as we get older, we lose that magic. And so I just love that you haven't lost that magic, Muffy. You asked the deeper question about societal norms and where we learn, how success and failures are defined. And I mean, I think it's from others, whether it be from our own family, our parents, brothers, sisters, friends, famous people in the world that you see highlighted. But, even the people that are super famous and well known and they've made it and they're a huge success, they have failures too. We just don't see them. There was this interview on CBS Sunday Morning yesterday. I'm thinking you probably didn't watch it, but it was on this famous TV and movie producer, Barry Diller. Now, I'd never heard of him, but I've heard of the movies he's done. He did Saturday Night Fever with John Travolta and like a whole bunch of things. But he was just talking, I guess he came out with a book where he just has kind of shared his life and he's been lying his whole life. And, in some ways, I think that's a failure because you don't bring your true self to the table. And of course, like, so I guess he was gay and he knew that he was gay at like a young age. And, he did things with other males and kind of denied it. But, uh, he never wanted to share that part of him because he was afraid. He was afraid. I mean, this was like the 1970s, and so people weren't accepting. And would he be successful as a businessman if he really showed his true self? And I get it all. I get the decisions made, but that is kind of like a part of like failing, right? And not in a bad way. I mean, he was very successful, and in fact, he went on to marry a woman, and she's a famous woman. I can't think of her name at the moment, and they have like the love of their life. And yet he's still also gay, but he still loves this woman. So he's many things, right? Um, and I think that's the gift now in current days that people can open up and speak their truths. But he couldn't for many years. And he finally did. So for me, like, that defines like him being successful, that he finally, after years of failing at being his true self, he came out and showed his true self. And that's success. Not, all the production of the movies and the, whatever. I mean, I kind of want to read the book now. But yeah, those are successes. But I don't think, and when you listen to him, you don't see him focusing on those successes. You see him focusing on himself. So, I mean, that's, I think, one way to define success, is being true to yourself and who you really are. Not to sound all preachy, but I do think society kind of helps us to define how we look at success or failure when it's really all the little things that are our successes. Yes, I do think there are failures. Look at certain things and realize where I failed, but like it's a failure where I then learned for it or I learned from it, or I was able to reflect and realize that I wasn't in a good place and I should never have been there. I didn't come to that realization until I failed. So I think there is failure, but from failure, of course, you do learn lessons. I mean, hopefully. I think a lot of people do. So yeah, I mean, like maybe I didn't win a running race when I was in high school or college. So I failed, but at the same time, I succeeded. So I think they kind of come hand in hand, to be honest. You can't really have one without the other. Perfection now, it's laughable if anybody says that they want people to be perfect. Because that's not the world. That's not reality. That's like something maybe you see on an old TV station way back when, like Leave It to Beaver or something like that, or Pleasantville, the movie, But in the end, everybody's not perfect. And look what happens. The world turns into color. And we want color, right? I think we do. Internally, we're all kinds of colors. And externally as well. I know I'm sounding all philosophical in a not very educated way, but I think that, there's also this should mentality. I should do this. I should do that. I should be successful. I should be, you know, and I try very hard never to use that word around my children because the should is just something that someone feels that another person is putting on them that they have to do it because. Why? Why? And maybe it's like age. We have a lot more experience and we can reflect. Although I think there are a lot of people that don't, and they don't really come into their own. I think you and I both have, and we continue to do that. But, like now, Mother's Day just happened not too long ago. And like, I am not a perfect mom. There are many things I've not done well, or there are many things that I feel like, oh, I wish I could be a better example. And I know that. And if my kids were to like call me out on it, I would say that. Yes. I think one of the reasons, one of the things that I've always done in business is like, if something I've done is not up to snuff or I needed to do something a different way or communicate it, I took that constructive feedback because I want it. I want to improve. So, but I think as a mom, there are many things that I have done well. It's hard to really admit that and it's hard to come up with them. But I do see that. I do see that I've done a lot of good things for my girls. So I do see that I think I'm raising my girls pretty well. And I've given them a lot. And so has A. So I'll take that. Successes and failures, they come big and small. And how can you really place a value on the small ones versus the big ones? I loved your story about the guy who made his own successful life, the way he envisioned it. It's tough for people to do, but wow, what an example of just, following your road to success of how you define success. And as exemplified with that story about the family, we all have greatness in us. I'll leave you with that to ponder. Wow, what an interesting topic. I really enjoyed discussing this with you, Muffy. I hope the listeners did too.
Hey, Habs, it's Muffy. Just wanted to take a last minute to say that my cast with my last name is a Gujarati name. So if you wanted to know, I know you were sort of saying it, but I just wanted to say, any one of our listeners out there who are wondering, kind of, the cast, it's not my last name is not Gujarati, but my last name Qatari is a Gujarati last name, and that is associated with a caste that is known as a business type family. So Qataris do business. So I just wanted to say that to make that clear that up. And also, yes, I did see the story on Barry Diller on CBS Sunday Morning, and he's married to Diane von Furstenberg, which is, I think she's a designer, like a fashion designer. And I think you're absolutely right. He had so much material success, like professional success, money success, but his whole life was spent as a lie. And I think he's cresting the wave of personal success and revealing who he is and who he has always been. And may we always remember that it is living our authentic selves that is at the basis of all success.
What does it really mean to be successful? Why does failure feel so final? And who gets to define perfection anyways? Redefining Enough is a candid and thought-provoking podcast episode that explores how we define success, failure, and perfection in our own lives, and how those definitions are shaped, distorted, or reinforced by the world around us. Through honest conversations, storytelling, and cultural critique, we unpack the pressures of achievement, the myths of flawlessness, and the very real consequences of living by someone else's standards. Whether you're a recovering perfectionist, questioning your definition of enough, or simply craving deeper conversations about identity, ambition, and self-worth, this podcast invites you to reimagine what success really looks like on your own terms. For more, follow us on Instagram at Girls Who Gab with Habs and Muffy. Till next time, when we talk about being clueless.